Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminally, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, questions from viewers. I'm doing my 25,000 subscribers Q&A. So I've said it before, but it bears repeating. I am blown away by the response to the channel and enormously grateful to everyone out there who watches my videos. I never expected the channel to amount to anything at all. So the fact that so many people have subscribed and so many people, regularly watch the videos and interact with me is absolutely wonderful. It's something that I really genuinely enjoy doing. I enjoy coming on here, sitting in front of my phone and rambling on about books, and I'm hugely appreciative that there are people out there who enjoy watching me do that. So thank you to everyone who's ever watched one of my videos. I really do appreciate it. And I wanted to start this video by saying a particular thanks to three big channels who supported me in the early days of my channel. And I think the support I got from these three booktubers really played a part in the early growth, in particular, of my channel, which then kind of, I guess, laid the foundations for me to continue to grow the channel. So those three people are Michael K. Vaughan, who was an early supporter and has continued to be a supporter and is a fantastic booktuber. If you're not already subscribed to any of the channels I'm about to mention, you really should be, because they're all great in different ways. So Michael K. Vaughan, absolutely fantastic. Steve Donahue, also fantastic. So really long-lived, a booktube channel of long-standing, who always has something interesting to say about books and has a great deal of experience of being a professional book reviewer, and who also is the person who came up with the idea of GarbAugust. So as we move into GarbAugust 2 this year, a lot of people are saying that GarbAugust was my brainchild. It wasn't. I just kind of shaped it. It was a comment from Steve that was the original spark that lit the garbage fire that has become GarbAugust. So yeah, thank you to Steve, and finally, and by no means least, Juan from the channel Played by Visions, who is was enormously supportive at the start, who has become a good friend, and who is an absolutely fantastic booktuber. He makes videos that are more different from mine than you could possibly imagine in terms of the amount of research and the depth he goes into with his videos. I feel like a complete amateur next to him. I think he's a really fantastic asset to booktube. So all three of those channels I will link in the description below. They're all great, and the success of this channel is down in no small part to the support of those three guys early on. So thank you to all of you. I really do appreciate it. Right, let's get on to the questions then. So I've got 32 questions, although some of these I think there's more than one question in. I've looked through all of the questions. I've got them on my iPad here. I haven't prepared particularly, so if I stumble at times, apologies. And there's a real variety of things here. So there are, some of the questions are about things you'd expect, so book recommendations and things like that. Some of them are about the channel, some of them are about my personal life, and some of them are about other very random things. So all sorts of different things here. So yeah, let's get into it, and I will go through the questions. I think I've captured all of them, but if you left a question on that post and I missed it, then sincere apologies. Okay, so the first question then is from Swizzle the Nerd, and these are in no particular order. Are you married? Do you have kids? What do you do for work? Do you say ground beef or beef mince? So I'll do the final one last. I'll do the final one first even. So I say beef mince. So we say mince over here in the UK rather than ground beef. Okay, right. So the other questions then. Are you married? Yes. So I've been married we celebrate our 20th wedding anniversary this year. Kids? Yes. So one son who is 15. What do I do for work? I work for a bank. I work in a role where I run a team that manage a piece of software, or a couple of pieces of software really, that are used by colleagues who work for the bank who deal with customers in financial difficulty. So if you can imagine, banks now more than ever with the cost of living crisis have to make sure they handle customers who've fallen into difficulty in the right way, sensitively, making sure that the customers can get back to financial health sustainably. My team manage a couple of probably the two main systems that are used by the colleagues who speak to customers. So we deliver changes into those systems to make what is a very difficult job for the colleagues easier. So that was a bit of a long explanation, but that's what I do for a living, and I really enjoy it. It's a job that I feel like I make a difference when I get up in the morning, because I know that the results of my day at work will help people who are financially struggling. Okay, next question then is from Kathy K. My question to you would be to tell us all about your regular life. What do you do for a living? So I covered that. How many kids do you have? So I covered that one as well. Does your whole family love books as well? So no. So my wife and son are not really readers. My son is getting more into reading in terms of, but he tends to read kind of non-fiction stuff, and he doesn't necessarily read books. He reads loads of like articles and things like that online, but doesn't necessarily read books. So he reads in a very different way to I do. My wife really likes audiobooks, so she's got an Audible subscription, and she's usually got an audiobook on the go, but they're not readers to the extent that I am. My original family, if you like, in terms of my parents and my sister, are all really big readers. Both my parents are big readers. My dad's taste in books definitely influenced me. He's very into kind of thrillers and sci-fi and things like that. And my sister, in fact, is an English teacher, so books are hugely important to her. Next question then is from JD Santibanez. Any pulp or noir recommendations? Golly, that's a really difficult one, and one I should have prepared for. I am continuing to. I'll tell you what. Actually, I'll give you a pulp recommendation of something that just landed through the door the other day. So, Men's Adventure Quarterly. So not a book, and obviously I talk about books on the channel a lot. This is more of a magazine. This is a magazine that republishes stories from Men's Adventure magazine. So really pulpy stuff, but often with a noirish vibe. This edition, which is issue number 8, is dedicated to hitmen. So definitely some noir stuff in here. I haven't read it yet, but it looks absolutely fantastic. So you get lovely illustrations and things like that from the magazines, as well as stories and articles, all sorts of good stuff. So thoroughly recommend this, and definitely fits in that kind of pulp and noir vein. Next question then from Steve R. What do your family and friends think about your extreme horror interest? I don't think they necessarily have a view. When I was growing up, and I've been into horror since I was a teenager. When I was growing up, my mum definitely didn't approve. She did not approve at all. And I think in a way that encouraged me to read more of it. I don't think my wife and son are particularly bothered. My wife does comment sometimes about me constantly reading books about killer slugs, which is a bit of an exaggeration. I don't only read books about killer slugs, but I do quite like killer slugs. I don't think they have a massively strong opinion on that. Next question from Read by Fred, a fantastic booktube channel. What do your wife and son think of of the questionable covers to some of the books that you bring home? Was there ever a book cover that your wife said, nope, not in this house? So no, there hasn't been yet. I mean, having said that, my wife doesn't necessarily get to see all of the books that I bring in, not because I hide them from her, but just because there's too many, and she's not that interested, to be honest with you. So I suspect there are some that if I put them in front of her, she might raise an eyebrow. But yeah, it's never been a problem. Let's put it that way. Next question then from Colin Pina. Hi Ollie, 2 questions. What do you do for a living? So that one I've covered. And do you find it helps or hurts your reading? I don't think it really has an impact on my reading necessarily. So I'm kind of in a bit of a transition period with work at the moment, in that and this will be true for many, many people. So pre-pandemic, I was working in London. I was commuting to London 4 times a week. So I was getting a lot of reading time done on the train. Since the pandemic, I've mostly worked from home. So in the last year to 18 months, going up to London maybe once a week. Soon I will be going up to London twice a week. So, there's a bit of a shift there. And I guess the main thing that's changed since pre-pandemic for me is having the channel. So I didn't have the channel pre-pandemic. I now have the channel, and it takes, a lot of time. So working from home has been a bit of a gift in terms of, being able to record videos in the morning before I start work and things like that if I need to. So when I'm going to London more, and admittedly it hopefully will only be 2 days a week, that may be more of a challenge, but it doesn't really impact my reading because I'm someone who can read anywhere. So I'm quite happy reading on the train. And then the second question from Colin was, what's one of the first book projects you might have done in grammar school? I distinctly remember enjoying Pippi Longstocking and making a diagram of it. That's an interesting question. So I remember the first books I remember reading at school, and I don't necessarily know that I did a project on them, but there was a series of books which were like early reader books called Roger Red Hat, I think they were called. So I remember reading those. I don't remember doing any book projects in. I don't really remember doing any book projects in primary school, so in elementary school, as you'd call it in the US. But I do remember in secondary school doing book reviews quite often, and one of the early ones I remember doing was of Battlefield Earth by L. Ron Hubbard, the huge and probably terrible science fiction novel, which I read when I was 11 or 12 and quite enjoyed. I did buy a copy of it recently, so I need to reread it, but it's like 900 pages long. And as I say, I think it's probably terrible, but I did enjoy it as a kid. So yeah, I definitely remember doing a review of that one. Okay, next question then is from Heidi Fogelberg. Hello, Heidi. Her question is, what would be your favourite thought for the channel's future? And I guess it's quite a simple one. It's just that I managed to keep on doing it. It has not to date been a struggle to do the channel, but I do. I put out 7 videos a week, and that's quite a lot. It's quite a lot of work to put out that amount of videos. So I hope sincerely that I manage to keep up, the energy levels to carry on doing that. And that people keep watching them, and that the channel continues to grow. So the channel had an explosive period of growth about a year ago, and has had steady growth since then. And that steady, the explosive period of growth was almost quite alarming. It was literally, I would wake up in the morning and I'd have a couple of hundred more subscribers than I had when I went to bed that night, and it was quite, not unsettling is the wrong word, but it was a shock that the channel grew that quickly. So yeah, that was I'm much more comfortable with the much more steady growth where I get maybe 10 new subscribers a day. That's a nice level of growth, and I'd like to maintain that. Ultimately, so I'm 50 years old, so I'm not a million miles away from retirement. And I would love to keep doing the channel, and to be able to keep doing the channel, and for the channel to keep growing, slowly until I retire, and then to, keep doing the channel. And once I've retired, I'll be able to put, more effort into the channel and hopefully, improve the quality of my videos and things like that. That's a long way off, but that will be, I guess, my dream for the channel would be that I keep it going that long. Right, next question is from Why the Book Wins, another very good channel you should check out. My question is, how's the growth of your channel changed your video making, if at all? Do you feel more pressure or overwhelmed, or does it make you more excited and motivated than before, or does it feel the same? So honestly, apart from that period of explosive growth, which, as I say, was a bit alarming, it's it doesn't really feel that different, and I don't feel like I'm really doing anything different than I was doing over a year ago. I come up with a few ideas a week. Some of them reviews, some of them are other things. I kind of map them out roughly, and then I sit down and talk to all of you about them. So I'm not really doing anything different than I was doing when I first started the channel. It's, my style and my confidence and things like that have gradually evolved and grown over time. But I don't really feel like I'm doing anything different. And a fantastic piece of advice that was given to me by Michael K. Vaughan at the time when I had that explosive period of growth, because he'd had fairly recently before that, I think he'd had something similar happen on his channel. So he had a video that got picked up by the algorithm like I did, and his numbers just went through the roof all of a sudden. And his advice to me was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something like, just pretend you've still got a small channel. Just carry on doing what you're doing. It's obviously working, and that's what I do. I'm very much a creature of habit. So once I get into a routine of doing things, that's just how I continue doing things, and that's certainly been the way with my videos. Right, next question from Hannah Morgan. What book do you wish you could go back and read again for the very first time? That's a good question. I think, and it's not necessarily just the book, I think it's the time at which I read it that I'm thinking about here. When I first read The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, and I was, I guess, about 13, it felt like it opened up a new world of books for me. It just felt so different from things I'd read up until that point, which have been much more, much more mainstream and traditional in style and content. The Wasp Factory really blew me away as a teenager as a book, and I still remember the feeling of finishing that book and thinking, wow, I've read something really special here, something that has really spoken to me as a reader in a way that not many books do. And that's, I think, the first time I really remember being taken aback by a book in that way. So I think that's my answer to that one. The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks. Okay, next question from Marcus Lujan. And apologies, by the way, if I'm mispronouncing people's names. I'm doing my best, but I'm conscious there's a few names here and a few more coming up that I may be mispronouncing. So if that is the case, I do apologise. Right, next question then from Marcus. How do you manage to read so much while also having a busy daily life? And the answer to that, and I did make some videos about this a while ago, is I suppose subconsciously prioritise reading. So I don't do many of the things that I think other people do with their free time. I read. So I don't really watch TV. I don't really play video games, although I used to play video games loads. More recently, so in the last couple of weeks, I have started playing Cyberpunk, which my son had heavily recommended to me. I am really enjoying it, so that has taken up a bit of reading time. But yeah, in the evenings, I will read, rather than watching TV. And you can easily sit there of an evening, and I would imagine probably the majority of people will sit there in the evening and watch 2 or 3 hours of TV. I read for 2 or 3 hours instead. And I just make time for reading. There aren't many other things that I do with my free time. It's definitely my favourite thing to do. Okay, next question then is from Alicia. This is a good one. You're chosen to be on an Animorphs book cover. What animal are you turning into and why? So I think I will be turning into a hedgehog because they're like a very English animal, and I consider myself to be quite an English individual, and they're kind of they're kind of I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for. They're kind of slow and a bit ponderous, which I would consider myself to be, and they can be quite defensive. So they literally roll up into a wall with spikes on, and I think I get quite defensive sometimes. And they're kind of they're kind of a bit dopey, but kind of cute as well. So I'll go with hedgehog. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my assessment of myself. Right, next question. My question is, so this is from Summer. What are some questions you would ask a booktuber? And also, do you tend to prefer book-themed questions, or do you find more personal questions fun to answer as well? So I'll do that second one first because it's easier. I like both. So I do like book-themed questions, but equally, I'm conscious that I talk about books all the time on the channel. So it's quite interesting sometimes to answer questions that aren't about books, that are about me. And I quite like doing, those kind of tag videos that I do sometimes where the questions are more about, my experiences and my personal life and things like that. What questions would you ask, or would I ask other booktubers? I suppose one thing I'm always interested in is, why do people think that they like? So it's almost like, and I'm waffling already. So when I think about the kind of books that I like, I suppose my question is, what is the thing that links together the majority of the books that you like? Your favourite kind of books. What is the thing that unites those? And for me, it's not genre necessarily. So, I like crime and horror, obviously. But what I really love is popular fiction that manages to carry a bit of a message without being, without overloading that message. And that's something that can span across, completely span across genres. And I also really like trashy books. So books that cash in on something, something popular in the public mind at the time. And I think with both of those things, to an extent, one of the things that really interested me is that kind of the interplay between, without trying to sound too pretentious, the interplay between art and commerce. So, we think about literature as kind of being above commercial considerations, which is nonsense. It's not at all, clearly. But when we think of great literature, we think of Shakespeare or someone like that, and we think of those people in the same way that we think about artists, like literal artists who paint one version of a picture. So like the Mona Lisa, obviously there's loads of reproductions of it and stuff like that, but there's only one Mona Lisa. And I think we tend to think about great works of literature in a similar way, whereas in fact, publishing is a commercial endeavour, and the profitability will always play a part in that. So I'm really interested in that overlap between art and commerce, as I say. So why do certain books get picked up by publishers, and what do they say? What do those books say about the state of society at the time? So I've really rambled there, but that's kind of my question is, what is my question for other booktubers and indeed other readers is, what is the common thread that ties together the books that you enjoy? But not thinking about genre, but beyond genre. That was very rambly. Apologies. Right, next question is from Vin0413. What are your desert island books? God, this is a difficult one as well. So probably, I don't know how many books you can take for desert island books, but let's go with 3. So I would probably take at least one book from the 87th Precinct series, because it's my favourite series of all time, and I can read those books over and over again. I'd probably want something really long, because I'm going to get bored otherwise. What would be a good long book to take? I'll tell you what, I've always wanted to read, and I've forgotten the name of it now, the Marcel Proust series that starts with Swan's Way, whatever it's called. What's it called? I'm going to have to look it up. So I've looked it up. It's called In Search of Lost Time. So it's like the longest, generally considered to be the longest novel ever, because it's published in multiple parts, but it's one continuing story. So I'm never going to read that. Realistically, I'm never going to read that otherwise. So if I was stuck on a desert island, I'd take that as one book and read that. And then one more. I think probably something by Stephen King. So something long. I'll tell you what, Christine by Stephen King, which was the first Stephen King book I read, and I would love to reread. And I think reading that would remind me of, that time in my life. So, kind of my early teenage years. And I think that would be in a way quite comforting. It sounds strange, doesn't it, to take a horror novel to comfort you, but there you go. Okay, next question. So I've got 3 questions now from Pokraj Roy. Could you give us I'm not sure. So it says, could you give us a shot breakdown, which I'm assuming is like a shot-by-shot breakdown, of the GarbAugust intro? I'm thoroughly intrigued. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my laptop and talk you through it. Okay, so the opening clearly is my standard opening, but I like the sense of kind of breaking the fourth wall almost, in terms of, you think you know what's going to happen, and then it changes. You then just follow me through the house, and I just film that with, just me walking around with the camera in different places. We then get into the bathroom sequence, which was the most complex sequence to film, clearly. So, the bits where you can see the toilet seat moving, basically my hand is just out of shot, moving the toilet seat up and down. I then recorded, the kind of shot reverse shot, or shot counter shot, whatever they call it, bits of me reacting to that. The toilet seat going up so we've got one of those toilet seats that when you go to move it down, it moves down slowly. So that's just that in reverse, sped up. I then, and this was actually the bit I filmed first. So I bought a green screen, which is basically just a big green sheet off Amazon, and lay that down on the lounge floor with my camera set up, my phone set up on my tripod, and then just dropped books onto it. So what you are seeing here is those books, the dropping of those books in reverse. It took me ages to edit, because I had to, there were loads of bits in between. You could see me leaning down and picking up the books and things like that. So you got that in between, and then I just filmed the toilet, and using my editing software, I could overlay the books on the toilet, if that makes sense. What you will notice if you look at the bits when the books fly out of the toilet is you can see some kind of lines on the screen, and those are literally where there were wrinkles, like creases in the green screen where it had been folded. So if I were doing this again, I would probably give it a bit of an iron or something like that. And then, so having sorted all of that out, I then stood in the toilet for about 20 minutes and just threw books from my face. And it was then just a case of editing it all together, which, as I say, I think the whole thing took me about 2 or 3 hours to do. So, the filming and the editing, but it was really the editing that took the longest part, and particularly making sure that the book you saw me hit myself in the face with was the same book that you'd just seen coming out of the toilet. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to do, and hopefully people found it entertaining. Certainly the comments on it were appreciative, so that was very nice. Hello, I'm Ollie, and this is Criminally, where hold on, what's that noise? Huh? What the? Ah, that's where I left my copy of The Colour of Her Panties. Right, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so again from Pokraj. Were you always a reader, like from school days, or is it something you've cultivated over the years? No, I was always a reader. So from as early as I can remember, I've read. I've always read a lot. since I was 5 or 6, I guess. It's been a lifelong passion for me. Next question then, what are some of your favourite restaurants and or cuisines? So I'm not really a big restaurant goer. Obviously I go out with my family every so often. In fact, my wife and I had a very nice meal last night in a local fish restaurant, which was quite nice. I had bouillabaisse, if that's how you pronounce it, which was lovely, like kind of Provençal fish stew. I think, and this is very low rent, so appropriate for me, my favourite restaurant in terms of I always enjoy eating there, and my whole family do. We always have a good time when we go there. The food's lovely, and you know exactly what you're going to get is Nando's, which I'm conscious is not, I believe, a restaurant chain that operates in the US. And I don't know which countries it does operate in. So Nando's is a South African restaurant chain that basically sells chicken. So it's not like Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's more like chicken burgers and things like that. But it's really, really nice. So not breaded chicken, just plain chicken, but spicy. So they use all sorts of different spices, and there's like 5 or 6 levels of spice you can choose to have with your meal. So yeah, big fan of Nando's. Next question then is from Johanna Reeds. What's one valuable thing you've learned from your viewers or from other channels? So aside from just getting recommendations, and I get book recommendations all the time in the comments, which is wonderful, and from other channels as well. I think it's something about getting the balance right between, and this is something I've definitely struggled with on my channel before, but it's getting the balance right between speaking my mind about things and being too political. So I'm conscious that when people watch my videos, what they want to watch is some random guy talking about books. But sometimes there are things in those books that I feel I need to comment on because they are, handled particularly badly, or they're offensive in some way. And obviously a lot of the books I talk about are older books where things like racism, sexism, homophobia are can be a thing. Yeah. And I think it's important that I do comment on those things, because I would hate for somebody to read a book that I've recommended and be really offended by it. And I think it's important that we call things like that out, because they are wrong. Yeah. And just because the book is old, it doesn't stop that thing being wrong. So I'll always do that. But equally, I think you can go too far. And I think I've gone too far in the past on a couple of occasions in terms of, really talking about my opinions on things. And I think people don't, people don't watch my videos to hear my opinions on things. They watch my videos to hear my opinions on books, but not on politics. So I think there's a balance there. But equally, I'm someone who will always read widely and diversely, and will talk about books I'm reading by diverse authors, and will sometimes prioritise doing that. And I make no apologies for that, because I think it's really important that we have a diverse group of authors to choose to read from as possible. So if I can champion authors from different groups, then I'll definitely do that. So that's something I've learned through through comments that people have left, and there are certainly comments that people have left on my videos where I have talked about politics where I thought the comments that people left were out of order, and they often people have unsubscribed and tell me they're unsubscribing, and that's fine. But equally, some people have left helpful, constructive comments about things like that. So that's been useful, and also just through observing other channels and how they handle topics like this, because it is something that comes up again and again, and it can be tricky. I think that that's been useful for me as well. So as a result of that, there are some videos that I've considered making that I've decided I've decided not to make, because I felt that they were pushing too far in a certain direction. Okay, next question then is from Erie B, whose question is, you said in a recent video, and this was my review of Billy Summers, that you have a weakness for hitmen with moral compasses. What are your top 5 tropes or plots, or whatever you want to call it? So I really like coming of age plots, because I think you can put a coming of age plot in pretty much any type of book, and it's it's something we've all experienced. It's a universal thing, so it creates, it can really create a connection between the character and the reader. And as I say, you can weave it into just about anything. So I think coming of age plots are always fun. Hitmen with moral compasses or criminals with moral compasses I always enjoy, because there's just I think it adds tension, because you've got something where someone is making their own choices about the things they will do, which are often different from the choices of the characters they are interacting with, and that creates tension, which is always enjoyable. I really like kind of heist plots, so plots where there's a lot of complexity to what the characters need to do. So lots of moving parts need to come together in order to get the outcome they want. And you can, that doesn't have to be a heist, but it's often done particularly well in kind of heist type stories. I really like locked room mysteries, so I love that the real puzzle of a locked room mystery, where it seems like the crime that's being committed is impossible. How many is that? Is that 4? I think that's 4. And a fifth one, I really like strong, active female characters. So female action heroines, I guess. I always really enjoy in books. So there's 5 for you. Next question is from Kerry Lohman. Do you have any other hobbies? Are you just as proficient in that hobby? So I don't really have any other hobbies. Reading and making videos about reading, definitely my 2 main hobbies. And before making videos about reading, I used to have a blog and write reviews and things like that, and used to contribute reviews to another website, which sadly isn't around anymore. So that kind of reading and thinking and communicating and talking about the things I've read, definitely my 2 main hobbies. The other thing I do is I do collect watches. So I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to watches. Really, really, really like watches, and have been collecting watches for probably 13, 14 years now. And less active now in the online watch community than I used to be. One time I was like really, really active in it. But yeah, that's probably my other hobby is kind of watches. Next one then is from Barb Giustiniano. Do you ever get nightmares from the books you read? No, I don't. I don't think I've ever had a nightmare from a book, not that I can remember anyway. And this is kind of related. So I suffer from sleep apnea, and now use a CPAP machine to sleep. But for years before I was diagnosed with sleep apnea, I just didn't remember my dreams at all, because I was never falling into a deep enough sleep, I guess. So I went for a good few years of just feeling like I wasn't dreaming at all. So maybe that's why I wasn't getting nightmares. And then the second question from Barb: what's your most cherished childhood memory? And I think it's probably not one individual thing, but going to my grandparents' house. So my dad's parents were really wonderful, and me and my sister used to go and stay with them quite often in the summer holidays. So either together, or sometimes we would go, just one of us and take a friend. And I remember their house so well, and their garden, and it was just, that for me is, a very, very happy part of my childhood. Okay, next question is from Bandy's Books. What has been the most surprising part of this journey? Well, I guess kind of as I said at the start, that anyone watches my videos at all, let alone the number of people who do. So as someone who is very much an introvert and is not, necessarily comfortable with public speaking, and never expected anyone to want to listen to what I had to say, the fact that the channel has been as successful as it has been is hugely surprising to me, and slightly perplexing. Next question then is from Tridit Books. Can you name one best book of your lifetime for thriller, horror and disturbing books category? So I'm not sure if we were asking for one book that covers all 3 of those, But I think I've got one that covers all three of those, and that is The Shining by Stephen King. So I think The Shining by King is a fantastic novel, and is, you know, thrilling, is a horror novel, and is very disturbing at times as well. I think it's a fantastic book, and I said this in my review of Billy Summers. What King often does is take two different stories and mash them together, and sometimes that can feel a bit clumsy. In The Shining, you've got the two stories of, you know, the haunted hotel, and, you know, Jack the alcoholic trying to deal with his life, and the collision of those two things in that book, I think, is wonderfully handled. And I think it's also, you know, an excellent book about addiction and an excellent book about writing. So I really do think The Shining is pretty fantastic. Next question then, from Helsing B. Is there a book you never want to read, and why? And the answer to this is no, I don't think there is. I don't think there's any book I would categorically say I will never read that book. I enjoy all sorts of different books. And I'm constantly surprised by books that I read that I wasn't, you know, necessarily expecting to enjoy hugely. You know, like I read Jane Eyre recently and absolutely loved that. So I think my answer to that question is no, I'm kind of open to anything. Next question then, and we're getting towards the end now. We're over 2/3 of the way through. It's from Chrisam70. Who is your all-time favourite writer in any genre? What makes you choose that particular writer? So my favourite writer is Ed McBain / Evan Hunter. So he wrote under both names. Evan Hunter was his real name, albeit not his birth name, but let's not get into that. So Evan Hunter was his legal name, and he published books as Evan Hunter, but wrote more books as Ed McBain. So as Ed McBain, he wrote the 87th Precinct series, which I've already mentioned in this video, which is a fantastic series of mystery novels. As Evan Hunter, he wrote a broader range of different things. But often, you know, kind of with thriller-ish elements to them. I just think he's a fantastic writer of popular fiction. His prose is simple but effective, and can be quite playful at times. You know, he writes really well. He's very easy to read, which is something I always value. But he's really meticulous and clever, and again, playful in his plotting as well. I just think he's an absolute joy to read, and I adore his books. Next question then is from John Gill. Do you follow any sports? If you do you have any favourite teams? No, I don't follow sports at all. I'm not a sports fan at all, I'm afraid. Never have been, never will be. I kind of, when it's the World Cup, if England are doing well, I might kind of get swept up a bit. But that's my limit. As a kid, my grandfather, so not the grandparents I talked about, my other set of grandparents, my grandfather was a huge cricket fan, and really wanted me as his first grandson to be a cricket fan as well, and took me to Lord's once to watch the cricket. So Lord's is a big cricket ground in the UK, and I was bored to tears here, but pretended to enjoy it. And then he was going to take me again, and cricket, the weather has to be good for cricket, and it got rained off. It was like really heavy rain that day, so they couldn't play. So we went to see Indiana Jones at the Temple of Doom at the cinema instead, and that was by far a better day of entertainment for me. Next question then is from MJ from the channel Reading This Life, another fantastic channel you should definitely check out. The question is, do you snack when you read? If yes, what is your favourite go-to? If no, why the heck not? So I'm actually on a diet at the moment, and so I'm trying to snack. I'm trying not to snack. I'm trying to just have meals. But I do snack when I read, traditionally. I have done it previously. I think the thing I try to snack on as a reasonably healthy snack is popcorn. So just popcorn with a little bit of salt, and maybe some paprika or something like that sprinkled on top. So that's probably my go-to, reasonably healthy snack. I'm a bit of a crisp addict as well, so I do eat a lot of crisps too, which is one of the reasons why I'm now on a diet. Next question then is from Keela. What is one book you could reread over and over without getting bored? Ooh. I'm thinking. I'm trying to think of like a book that I find really funny. because I think a funny book would be a good book for that. So I think I'm going to go with Fat Olly's book by Ed McBain. So that is one of the books in the 87th Precinct series, and one of the most playful and humorous books in that series. Very, very funny book with a really intricate plot, which you could definitely read over and over again. Next question then is from... Oh, I've already answered that one. Okay, next question then is from Dan Perry. Could you please explain your daily reading schedule, i.e. where you fit your reading into your daily routine around home life, etc.? So I've kind of talked a bit about this already, but let me go into a bit more detail. So I'm an early riser, so I get up before the rest of the family, and I typically have a bit of time, half an hour to an hour in the morning before I need to start work, before I need to wake anyone else up and things like that. So I often read then. I exercise in the morning, so we've got a cross trainer or elliptical, as you call it in the States. So I use that in the morning, and I'm able to read while I do that. So that gives me some reading time in the morning. If I'm commuting, as I've said, I will read on the train, and I also read in the evenings. And then at the weekend, again, I get up earlier, I get up at the same time at the weekend as I do during the week. My family are less early risers than I am, so I normally get a good few hours on a Saturday and Sunday morning uninterrupted, where I can either read or film videos and things like that as well. Okay, next question then. Oh, actually, this is the last question, so apologies. I had duplicated some questions in this list, so I thought I had more left to go than I have. Is from Necromantica, and the question is best vampire novels. So that's an interesting one, and I'm not necessarily particularly a fan of vampire novels. But I've definitely read a few over the years. So let's go with the obvious one first. So Dracula by Bram Stoker, a fantastic novel, a really important novel in the history of horror, clearly, definitely worth reading. I also really like Vampire Junction by S.P. Somto, who's a Thai author. So this is a really, really interesting vampire novel about a guy who's like a teeny bopper, musician, but who is actually a centuries-old vampire. So that was really good. And there's a couple of other books in that series that I need to read. Throat Sprockets by Tim Lucas, I've talked about on the channel before. So not a traditional vampire novel by any means, but a really interesting, weird book that I really, really enjoyed. And another vampire book I really like is Suckers by Anne Bilson, which is an early 90s British horror novel set in London, with a kind of cast of yuppies. So a very fun, quite darkly comic book at times. But Bilson is a film reviewer as well, who specialises in horror movies. So she really knows her stuff in terms of kind of vampire references and things like that. So that's a good one. And then from a similar time, and again from the UK, Anno Dracula by Kim Newman, which is basically a sequel to Dracula, where Dracula has married Queen Victoria. And kind of vampires now kind of rule Britain. So that's another really entertaining one. Right, so that is, I think, all of the questions answered. Again, apologies if I missed one, and apologies as well that this video has gone on so long. But thank you sincerely to everyone who asked a question, and again, thank you to everyone who watches the channel. I appreciate it enormously. So yeah, without your support, without your comments, without your views and thumbs up and things like that, the channel would not exist. You are as important, all of the viewers are as important to the channel as I am. So really, really big thank you. And I hope you continue to enjoy my videos. If there's anything in particular you'd like me to do let me know in the comments. But I'll leave it there for now, as we've got on long enough, and say thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.